In this video, I'm going to go over at least 30 functions, formulas, shortcuts, and tips and tricks that you could use when working with Excel. So just to name a few, we're going to go over the AutoFill function, flash fill, shortcut keys that can quickly save your work, or if you want to quickly print your work, you can do that. Or if you want to open up a new workbook, there's some shortcut keys that can help you to get that done quickly. We're going to talk about how to sort data, how to filter data, how to freeze rows and columns, so when you're scrolling down, you can always look at the top row or the first column. We're going to go over some mathematical operations, such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. We're going to talk about the sum function, the average function, and even some functions for statistics, like calculating the median, the mode, the range, standard deviation, and things like that. We're going to go over VLookUp. We're going to talk about how to bold, italicize, and underline text using shortcut keys, how to move rows and columns, how to use the find and replace function, and a lot of other stuff, such as calendars in Excel. You can quickly print pre-made calendars that you could use. We're going to talk about how to make a line graph or a scatter chart using Excel, how to display the equation on the chart, and even use the forecast function when predicting future values. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to look forward to, so stay tuned. So let's begin with the first one. Let's merge these three cells into one cell. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the AutoFill function. One way in which you could use it is if you're writing the months in a given year. So let's start with January. Left click and hold the button at the bottom right and drag it. You can stop at July, you can stop at September, you can go all the way to November. It's up to you. You can also extend it this way. And so that's another way in which you could use the AutoFill feature. So let's undo the last thing that we did. And if you need to adjust the column width, simply left click the line between the two columns and then adjust it. Now we can also copy cells and extend them as well. Let's say if we have the name Mary. Using the AutoFill feature, you can copy your name as many times as you want. Let's say if you have the number 5, you can do the same thing too. And for months, let's say if you have the abbreviated version of the month January, you could extend it. Let's go to December. Now you can also extend patterns of numbers. So if you select these two cells and you extend it, we can get a pattern of numbers, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And so you can extend an arithmetic sequence. So let's say if we started with 7 and we're going up by 5. You could highlight the 3 cells so Excel could see what pattern you're trying to extend. And then it's going to follow that pattern. Now sometimes you may want to extend a geometric sequence as opposed to an arithmetic sequence. So let's say if we started with the number 2 and then we multiply it by 2 to get 4, and then multiplied 4 by 2 to get 8, and then 8 times 2, which is 16, and we want to extend this pattern. If we try to do what we did before by left clicking the button at the bottom right and extending it, it won't give us the geometric pattern that we want. So let's undo it. Instead, what you want to do is right click the button at the bottom right and then extend it. Now, once you do that, once you let go, this will appear. And what you want to select is a growth trend as opposed to a linear trend. And so it automatically detects that what you have is basically a geometric sequence. And as you can see, the numbers are increasing by 2. So that's another way in which you could use the AutoFill feature. Now you can also use it for dates. So let's say if we have May 1st, 2018, and we wish to extend it. you can left click it and then extend it. And then you can make this wider so you can see dates that require more space. Now let's undo it. So this time we're going to right click the button at the bottom right and then extend it. So here we have an option. Instead of filling days, we can fill weekdays, months, or years. If we fill months, notice that the months will change. So May 1st, June 1st, July 1st, and so forth. Now we can also fill years. So right click the button at the bottom right and extend it. And then select fill years. And you can see the years are increasing: 2018, 2019, 2020. And so those are some ways in which you could use the AutoFill function. Number 2, flash fill. So in column B, we have the full name of a few individuals. And let's say if we want to put the first name in column C and the last name in column D. We could use the flash fill feature in Excel to do this. So in cell C3, type in John. And then once you do that, you can right click this button at the bottom right and then drag it. Now this window will open up, and once it does, select flash fill. As you can see, Excel is going to look to the column at the left and fill in the first name that it sees. Now we can also do the same thing with the last name. We just need to type in the first last name, Smith, and then follow the same procedure. Select flash fill, and there it is. So that's how you could use flash fill in Excel, just by taking the information in one column and simply separating it into different columns. Number 3, quick save. Sometimes you may want to save the work that you're working with, and what you need to do is press Control S. So if you do that, you get the option to save your work. Number 4, quick print. So if you type in Control P, it's a quick way to print whatever you have on your workbook. So Control P, this will open up, and then you could select Print to print the information that you have. Number 5 is generating a new workbook. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can go to File, and then select New, and then this will open up. If you don't want to do that, just press Control and capital N, or just N in general. So Control N, it'll automatically create a new workbook that you could use. If you wish to create a new sheet, just press this button at the bottom right, and it'll create a new sheet. Correction, I meant to say at the bottom on the left, not on the right side. This is the left side. So if you want a third sheet, you can press this button again, and then you can get a new sheet as well. Now, number 6. But first, let's zoom in. So let's talk about the Concatenate function. So let's say if we have 2 columns of information. Here we have the first name. Let's say John Smith. Smith is the last name. And let's say Karen Wilson. And then Luke Williams. And then Ron Gonzalez. And then Susan Garcia. Now let's say if we want to take the information in 2 separate columns and combine it into a single column. So one way in which we could do that is using the concatenate function. So I'm going to type in equal concatenate, and then text 1. So I'm going to highlight cell B4, and then after that, comma, cell C4. And notice that it combines the information in cell B4 and C4. However, we don't have a space in between the two names. So let's fix that. So going back to the function, you can double click it to get to this, to what you see here. Now between B4 and C4, type in quotations, space, quotations, and then comma. So it puts a space between the first name and the last name. After that, you could use the AutoFill feature to basically extend the pattern. And so that's how you could use the Concatenate function if you wish to combine the information in two columns into a single column. In addition to using the Concatenate function, we can also use something called TextJoin. So if you type in equal TextJoin, it'll have the same results as the Concatenate function. So first we'll need to select a delimiter, which is going to be the space character, because we want a space between John and Smith. So let's put it in quotations, and then put the space character in between the quotation marks, and then press comma. Now let's select true to ignore any empty cells. Text 1 will be cell B4, and then press comma. Text 2 will be cell C4, and then close the parentheses. So it's another way in which we can combine the information found in these cells. Number 7, text to column. Text to column is another way in which we can take the information in a column and split it into other columns. So let's select cells B3 to B6. After that, click Data, and then select Text to Column. Now we have two options, delimited or fixed width. Let's go with delimited. Select Next. Now you have to choose one of the delimiters. Since we have a space between Jared and James, the delimiter we're going to choose is space. And you could see under Data Preview, it separates Jared from James. And then click Next. Now you need to select the destination. So let's press this button, and I'm going to put it in these two columns. Press Enter, and then Finish. So notice that it separates that information in those two columns. Now, let's focus on what we have here. So here we have the first name, the middle initial, and the last name, and they're separated by commas. So once we select cells B8 to B11, go to Data, Text to Columns, Delimited, and then let's select comma as the delimiter. Press Next, and then let's get rid of that. Now we're going to put the information in these three columns. Press Enter, and then Finish. So as you can see, the information has been separated into those three columns. So that's how you could use the text to column feature in Excel. Now, let's go ahead and select everything by pressing Control A. This will select everything in a worksheet, and then we could press the delete button to delete everything. So now let's move on to number 8, and that is the Transpose function. So this function will allow us to convert vertical data into horizontal data and vice versa. So let's say we have the names John, Sally, Newton, Mike, Crystal, and Kristen. So what you want to do is you want to copy these names. You can go to File, actually not File, Home, and then Copy. And then let's select cell D3. Right click and go to Paste Special. once you're there, select Transpose. And as you can see, the vertical data was transposed into horizontal data. Now let's undo it. Now sometimes you may have two columns of data. So let's say we have John Williams, Sally Gonzalez, Newton Clark, Mike Johnson, Crystal Wilson, and Kristen Smith. So let's select these two columns, and you could press Control C to copy those two columns. Now let's go ahead and select cell E3. Right click, Paste Special, and then Transpose. So as you can see, you could transpose two columns of information from a vertical format to a horizontal format. Now, let's go ahead and copy this information here. So let's press Control C, and let's go to Paste Special, Transpose. So that's how you can convert horizontal data into vertical data. You could just follow the same procedure. And so that's it for number 8. Number 9, sorting data. Let's select this column of information, and then right click. You can go to Sort, and we're going to put it in alphabetical order, A to Z. We don't want to expand the selection. Let's continue with the current selection. And so that particular column, as you can see, has been sorted. So we have Crystal, John, Kristen, Mike, Newton, Sally. It's been put in alphabetical order. However, notice that the names are no longer correct because the third column did not change. So let's undo what we did. Right click. Let's go to Sort, A to Z. This time we're going to expand the selection. So notice John, his last name is Williams, and Sally is Gonzalez. And then we have Newton Clark, Mike Johnson, Kristen Wilson. So if we select expand the selection, we're still going to have the same names, Mike Johnston, Newton Clark, Sally Gonzalez. But in column B, the names have been put in alphabetical order. But column C has been adjusted so that the names of these individuals, they match to what it was before, if you select expand the selection. And so that's one way in which you can sort data. Now you can also sort numbers. So let's say we have some random numbers. So let's select these numbers, right click, and we're going to go to Sort. This time let's sort it from largest to smallest. And I'm going to continue with the current selection. I don't want to change anything else. As you can see, it's been sorted from the highest number to the lowest number. And so that's how you can sort data in Excel. Number 10, filtering data. One way I like to do this is I like to turn this into a table. So let's select those 3 columns and then go to Insert, Table. My table has headers, so let's make sure that's checked and then press OK. So notice that these drop-down cells appear. So in this case, I can deselect everything, and let's say I want to filter out everything except apples. So once I select that, all of the apples will be shown. I can click again. Let's say if I want to see the oranges as well. And so I could do that. Now, within apples, I can also filter it again. Let's say I only want to see the green apples. I can do that as well. And so that's one way in which you could use the filter feature in Excel. Now, you can also filter by the numbers as well. So let's say if I only want to see the fruits that are between, let's say, 20 and 50. I can go to Number Filters, and between 20 and 50. And as you can see, it's only going to show me the fruits that have a quantity between 20 and 50. Number 11, freeze rows and columns. Now sometimes you may want to freeze the rows and columns that you're working with. And I may need to delete this row. One way in which you can do this is you can go to View, Freezepanes, and freeze the top row. And so what happens is as you scroll down, notice that you will always be able to see the top row. So this is useful because sometimes you may have a column and you may want to know what this information corresponds to. So for Christine, she lives in Portland, Oregon, and this is her zip code. And so you can easily see it using Freezepanes. Now to undo it, just go back to Freezepanes, unFreezepanes. And so that feature is no longer there. Now, in addition to freezing the top row, you can also freeze the first column on the left. So by doing that, if you scroll to the right, you can see the first name of the individual. Now, sometimes you may want to freeze the top row and maybe the first two columns at the same time, or just the first column. If you want to freeze the top row and the first column, select cell B2. And then after that, go to Freezepanes and simply select Freezepanes. Notice that we have a horizontal line above the active cell, cell B2, and a vertical line to the left of it. So now, if we scroll to the right, notice that we have frozen the first column. And if we scroll down, the first row is frozen as well. So now let's unselect it. This time, let's say if we want to freeze the first two columns on the left and only the top row. So I'm going to select cell C2 and then select Freezepanes. So now notice that the first two columns are now frozen. And the first row, the top row, is also frozen as well. And so that's how you could use the Freezepane feature in Excel. Number 12, extract text from cells. So here we have the item number in column B, and what we want to do is split it into its three parts. So in column C, we want to put the location, which let's say the first four numbers represent the location of the item. And then the next three letters, let's say ABC, represents the manufacturer. And then the last two represents the size of the item. So we want to take the information in this text and break it up into three parts. So the way to do this is to use the left, mid, and right function. So let's use the left function. Type in equal, left, and then select the text. In this case, highlight cell B3. And then after that, once you press comma, you need to select the number of characters. So we only want the first four characters starting from the left. So press 4 and then close the parentheses. As you can see, it gives us the first four characters. And then use the AutoFill feature to extend the pattern. Now let's do the same thing for the second column, or column D. So we're going to use the mid function, and we need to select the text found in cell B3, comma. Now we need a starting number. So we want to extract the text starting from character 6 because that's where the first letter A starts. We want to take ABC from this entire text string. And A, the letter A, starts at the 6th position from the left. So we're going to type in 6. So starting from that position, we only want to extract 3 characters, ABC. And now let's extend the pattern. Now for the last one, to get the last two numbers, let's use the right function. So we're going to select the same text string, and starting from the right, we only need the first 2 characters. And so that will give us the size. So that's how you can extract text from cells using the left, mid, and right function. Number 13, the AutoSum function. Let's say if you wish to calculate the sum of a column of data. To do so, type in equal sum and select the data that you want to add up. And so the sum for these 6 numbers is 168. And we could do the same thing for the next column. And so that's a simple way in which you could use the AutoSum function. Now, another way in which you can add numbers is you could do this equal sum. Let's say if we wish to add 2 numbers, 20 and 30, and that's 50. Let's say if we wish to add 3 numbers, equal sum 20, 30, 40, and so we can add 3 numbers. Another way to do that is simply type in equal 20 plus 30. That will give you 50. Or you can do equal 20 plus 30 plus 40, and it will give you 90. And so those are some other ways in which you can add numbers. Number 14, averages. Sometimes you may want to calculate the average or the mean of a data set. And you could simply type in equal average and then select the data set that you want to find the average of. So the average of these 6 numbers is 28. And what you could do is you could use the AutoFill feature to extend it for the second column as well. Now you can also take the average of any numbers that you want to. Let's say if we want to find the average of 20 and 30, you could simply type it in to the average function. Let's say if we want to average 5 numbers, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. So you could do it that way as well. So the average of those 5 numbers is 50. Number 15, the count function. The count function allows you to basically count the number of cells that contain numbers. So if I type in equal count, you can see what it says. It counts the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. So let's say if we select these cells, it will give us a total of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so that's how you could use the count function. Now there are other functions that are similar to the count function that you could use. So let's say if we have a column of data that contains numbers and letters. So if we were to use the count function, it's only going to count the cells that contain numbers. So there's 3 of them, 1, 2, 3. It won't count these 2 because it contains letters. The next one we're going to discuss is the CountA function, which counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So we get a total of 8. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it doesn't count the empty cells, but it counts the cells that contain letters or numbers. Now the last one that I want to talk about is the CountBlank function. And as you can see, it counts the number of empty cells in a specified range of cells. So from E2 to E12, we have a total of 3. 1, 2, 3. And so those are some different count functions that you might find useful when dealing with Excel. Number 16, basic operations. let's say mathematical operations. So in this column, we're going to perform simple addition, and then in the next one, subtraction, and then multiplication, and division. So let's say if we wish to add the information in columns B and C. So I'm going to type in equal B3, which is 15, plus C3, which is 97. And so 15 plus 97 gives me 112. And then I'm going to extend a pattern. So 35 plus 75 is 110. 52 plus 8 is 60. Now let's say if I want to perform subtraction. So I'm going to subtract B3 by C3. And so 15 minus 97 is negative 82. And then use the AutoFill feature to extend it. Now for multiplication, equals B3, and then press Shift 8, so it gives you the multiplication symbol, times C3. And so 15 times 97 is 1455. Now let's move on to division. So let's take the information in B3 and divide it by the information in cell D3. And so you could use the backslash button for division. So 15 divided by 97 is 0.1339. And so that's how you could perform some basic operations in Excel. Now let's extend the sum pattern. So I'm going to highlight these two cells and extend it. And so now I can see the sum of this column. So those 6 numbers, 112 plus 71 all the way to 42. The sum for that is 432. And then for the averages, we could extend it. And so the average for these 6 numbers is 72. The average for these 6 numbers is negative 16. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is some other operations. For instance, let's say if you want to determine what is 5 squared. You know 5 squared is 25. But the way you can do it is you can type in equal 5, shift 6. So that's, raised to the, in this case, second power. That gives you 25. Let's say if you want to find 7 to the third power, 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. Or if you want to find 8 squared, there you go. Or let's say 2 to the fourth power. And so that's how you could raise a number to an exponent. Now, the second thing you want to deal with is, or you want to be familiar with, is the square root function. So if you type in equal, SQRT, it'll give you the square root of a number. So the square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 64 is 8. The square root of 144 is 12. And so those are some other functions or other basic operations that you might find useful in Excel. Number 17, max and min functions. Sometimes you may need to use Excel within the realm of statistics. And let's say if you want to find the range. The range is going to be the difference between the maximum values and the minimum values. So to find the maximum within a certain range, all you got to do is type in equal max and then select a column. And this will give you the maximum number in this range, which is 52. So if we repeat that, let's say if we extend the pattern, so the maximum number in this range in these 6 cells is 97. For this one, it's 112. Now, to use the minimum function, it's very similar. So if we type in equal min, and let's select these 6 cells, the minimum is 12. And now we can extend the pattern. So to calculate the range, it's simply going to be the difference between the maximum value, B11, and the minimum value, B12. So the range is 40. And then just extend it. So the range here is going to be 89. 112 minus 37 is 75. Now, some other statistics formulas that you may encounter are the median function, the mode, and sometimes you may need to calculate the standard deviation. So if you type in equal median, it's going to give you the median of those 6 numbers, which is 27. So let's say if we sort those numbers, so let's go to, let's see, oh, here it is, sort and filter from smallest to largest, and let's continue with the current selection. So of course that's going to change our information that we have here. But the median, if you have an even number of data points, it's going to take the average of the 2 middle numbers. So the average of 26 and 28 is 27. So that's the median. Now the mode is the number that occurs most frequently. So let me create a new column with information. So we can see that 15 is going to be the mode because it has the highest frequency. It occurs most often. And so that's how you could use the mode function in Excel. Now sometimes you may need to calculate the standard deviation. If you type in equal stdev, there's 2 types. There's .p and .s. Let's use .s, the sample standard deviation, as opposed to the population standard deviation. And then select the column that you want to select. And so the standard deviation for these numbers, the sample standard deviation, it's 14.5. And so those are some Excel functions that you could use when dealing with statistics. So now let's move on to our next topic, number 18, show formulas. So if you wish to show the formulas, all you need to do is go to Formulas and then select Show Formulas, and then you can see everything. So here we have addition. We can see what we put in, B3 plus C3, subtraction, sum, average, the formulas for multiplication and division. And then if you want to undo it, just click the Show Formulas button, or you can press Control tilde, or tilde rather, and it's gonna go back to where you started. So let's go to Draw. So you need to press this, the Control button, and then the tilde button, which is to the left of the number 1 button on your keyboard. So if you press Control tilde, it's going to show the formulas. And then if you do it again, it's going to go back to what you see here. Number 19, VLookUp. So here we have the names of a few sales agents. We also have the monthly sales that they've generated, their contact info, their email, phone number, and also their age. Now we could use the VLookUp function to look up any of the information for these individuals. So based on the name that we input in cell D9, we're going to use the VLookUp function to retrieve information from this database. So we're going to retrieve their sales, their email address, their phone number, and also their age. So let's start with Jason Smith. Let's use the VLookUp function to look up his sales. So let's type in equal VLookUp, and it looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table and then returns a value in the same row from a column you specify. So we're going to look up their name, which is on the left side, basically in column A. So our lookup value is going to be whatever is in cell D9. Press comma, Now when you select the table array, the first column that should be selected is based on the information that you're looking up, which is we're looking up information using the names of the individual. So the left column has to start with the name. Now the column index number. So we want to look up the sales. The first column that we have selected is column A. So that's column number 1. The sales is in the second column that is selected. So that's going to be column number 2. And then for the last one, we have two options, true or false. We're going to go with false for an exact match. As you can see, it gives us the sales for Jason Smith, which is 15,000. Now let's go ahead and change the number format. So I'm going to right click and then select, well, let's adjust that. So let's click the arrow, more counting formats. So we have, let's go to currency, and I'm going to decrease the decimal places to 0. So we have 15,000. Now let's look up his email address using the VLookUp function. So the lookup value will still be based on whatever we put in cell B9. The table array will be the same. The column index number for the email, that's in column C, so starting from the left, that's column 3. It's the third column that we've selected. And let's choose false again. So now we have his email address. Now let's do the same for his phone number. And this time it's going to be column 4 instead of column 3. And so we have his number. And finally, let's look up his age. So that's going to be column 5. And so he's 27. Now notice what happens if we adjust the name. Let's say if we type in Lisa Rodriguez. I said that wrong. Lisa Rodriguez. I still said that wrong. But you get the point of what I'm trying to say. So once you change her name, you can see the information changes. Automatically, we can see that her sales is 24,000, her email address, phone number, and her age. And so that's one way in which you could use the VLookUp function. Now let's move on to number 20, which is creating a drop-down list. So instead of typing the name of your sales agent, you may want to create a drop-down list in which you could just select the name of that individual. So to create a drop-down list, go to Data and then select Data Validation. Under this section, type in or select Lists, and then it's going to give you this source information. Now what you can do is you can press this button at the right and then highlight the names that you want to be included in your drop-down list. After that, press Enter and then press OK. So now you have a drop-down list. So if we go back to Jason Smith, you can see the information will be updated. If we select Carl Wilson, we can see his sales information of 32,000, his number 354173, and so forth. If we change it to Lauren Williams, then the information will be updated here. So using the VLookUp function combined with a drop-down list, you can retrieve data from a database. Now granted, this is a small amount of data, but if you have a file with, let's say, 500 lines of information, this function will be very useful. Number 21, shortcut keys. There's a lot of them, but I'm going to go over some of them. For instance, let's say if you want to bold the word sales. You could go to the Home tab and select bold. It's a simple way of doing it. Another way, a quick way, is to press Control B and you can bold whatever text you want to. So Control B, and you can quickly do that. To undo it, just press Control B again. Another one is to italicize something. So if you want to italicize the word email, you can press this button, or you can press Control I. and you can italicize it. If you wish to underline a text, press Control U, and it's going to underline it. And if you want to do like a strike through, press Control 5, and you can put a strike through. So let's say we want to take out Mark Thomas. Control 5, and we can basically put a line through his name. Number 22, insert line break. Now let's say if I want to put, let me think of something, Jason Smith. Now if I press enter, automatically I'm going to go to the next cell. But let's say if I want to put Jason Smith in one cell, however, I want Smith not to be on the same line but to be below Jason. So what you can do is type in Jason and then press Alt, A-L-T, and enter. Then you can create a line break. Now you can type in the word Smith. And so you can see it's all within the same cell. So let's do that again. Let's say if I want to type in Lisa and then Alt, A-L-T, enter, Rodriguez. And so that's how you can insert a line break. Just Alt plus enter. Number 23, Autofit column width. A simple way in which you can do this is by, you can press this button to select everything, and then you can double click, and it's automatically going to resize the width of each column. So let's extend this. If I double click, you can see that it's going to adjust the width of all the columns. Number 24, insert rows and columns. A simple way to insert a new column is simply to select a column, right click, and then press insert. And so those are simple ways in which you can insert a column. To insert a row, do the same thing. As you can see, you're going to insert a row above the one that you select. So that's how you can insert rows and columns. Number 25, move in rows and columns. So in order to move a column, select the column, hold down the Shift key, and then when you see those 4 arrows, you can move it to wherever you want to. Now let's click undo. Now sometimes you may want to select 2 columns and you want to move 2 columns together. So hold down the Shift key, wait till you see the 4 arrows, and then move it wherever you want to. And so that's how you could move columns. Now we could do the same thing with rows. So let's select row 5, hold down the Shift key once you see those 4 arrows, and then move it somewhere. And so now that row has been shifted. Or we can move 2 rows. So hold down the Shift key and then just left click and drag those rows to wherever you want them to be. And so that's how you can move rows and columns in Excel. Number 26, find and replace. To use the find function, you can simply press this button here and go to find. Or you can access it by pressing Control F. And by doing that, you can use the find or the replace feature. So let's start with find. Let's find Lisa. So I'm going to go to find all, and here in cell A4 you can see it tells you which cell you have Lisa Rodriguez, or in cell C4 you also have the word Lisa, but it's in an email, or in cell F9 you have Lisa Rodriguez. So the find function can help you find a certain text within a cell, and it also tells you the location of the cell and the sheet that it's located in this case, sheet 4. Now the next one, the replace function, we can replace the word Lisa with, let's say, Susan. So select replace all, and everywhere we saw Lisa, now we have Susan. And so that's how you could use the find and replace function in Excel. Number 27, lowercase and uppercase. So let's say if we have a few text strings that we wish to edit. So I'm going to put it here. So let's say we have the name Rodriguez, and it's not edited well. So what we could do is use the lowercase function if we want to, and notice what it does. It converts all letters in a text string to lowercase. And so you can basically edit certain text strings. Now we can also use the uppercase function, and it's going to convert everything into uppercase. Now let's say if we have a name, let's say Lauren Williams. We can also use the proper function, which will capitalize the first letter in each word to uppercase. So let's select cell G4. And so as you can see, the name Lauren Williams, only the first letter of each word has been capitalized. And so those are some other functions that you could use in Excel. Number 28, Excel calendars. Sometimes you may want to print a calendar, and Excel has some pre-made calendars that you can already use. If you go to File, this is Excel 2016 by the way, and if you select New, you can see some calendars that you can choose from. So let's select this particular calendar. Let's go to Create, and so we have a new workbook with the calendar. And of course we can change the first day of the week. Let's make it Sunday. So instead of having Monday here, we have Sunday. We can select a different calendar, a different month of the calendar. So currently this is the month of June, and we don't really need to select the year because it's automatically going to put the proper year that it is. Right now the current year is 2018, so you don't have to adjust it. And now if you need to, you can just print this calendar. So press Ctrl P, and you can print the calendar and do whatever you want with it. Now let's go back to New. So if you type in calendars, you can get a lot of calendar templates. So there's many different calendars that you can choose from. And so feel free to take a look at that when you get a chance. By the way, if you want more advanced examples on Excel, or any examples that we went over, just more detailed applications of these functions, feel free to check out the description section of this video. I'm going to post a link to my Excel video playlist, and you can pick and choose the topics that you want to focus on. So now let's move on to number 29. Conditional formatting. So let's say if we highlight this column. If you press this button at the bottom right, you have the option to basically format those cells. So you can use data bars, color scale, you can highlight numbers that are greater than a certain value, you can choose the top 10%, and so there's a lot of things you can do. You can also click here, Conditional Formatting, and let's highlight cells with, let's say, cells between a certain value. So any cell between, let's choose 30 and 40, we're going to give it a certain color. So let's go to Custom Format, let's change the font color to black, but the fill color, we're going to give it a green color. And so any number between 30 and 40 will have a green color, as you can see here. So you can also format text values as well, in addition to numerical values. So that's one way in which you could use conditional formatting. If you want to see more examples, check out that playlist that I talked about earlier in this video, which I'm going to put in the description section of this video. Now, for the last one, I'm going to go into a new sheet. And let's call this one, well, first let's merge these three cells. And let's call it Excel graphs. Sometimes you may need to make a lab report. It could be a chemistry lab report, a physics lab report, and you have some sort of data and you want to graph it. You want to find the trendline equation with the slope-intercept, the slope and the Y-intercept. And so let's say if we have a linear function. Let's say when x is 1, actually let's say 0.20, y is 4. When x is 0.60, let's say y is 12. When x is 0.8, let's say y is 16. When it's 1.2, we'll go with 24. And let's say it's 1.8, and then it should be 36. And let's say it's 2.0, then it's going to be 40. So notice that when x increases by 0.2, y increases by 4. When x increases by 0.4, y increases by 8. And so what we have here is a linear function. Now let's go ahead and select the data, and let's go to Insert. We're going to select a scatter chart. Let's select the scatter chart with the smooth lines, and let's zoom out. And so here we have our graph. So we have the x values here and the y values on the y-axis. Now, of course, you can basically adjust the chart elements that you have. You can include the axis titles, any data labels, and also a trend line. Now let's go to trend line. More options. And you could display the equation on the chart. Sometimes you may need an equation that goes with this. So the equation is really y equals 20x. The plus 3 e to the negative 14, that's like 0.000000003 times, just 3. And so that's basically about 0. So the real function is y is equal to 20x. So if you need an equation that describes your data, you can just do what we did here. Select trend line and then display the equation on the chart. So that means that the slope is 20 and the y-intercept is 0. So when x is 0, y is 0. Now keep in mind that linear functions are typically in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. So the number in front of x, which is m, that is the slope. B is the y-intercept, which, as you can see, is virtually 0. Another way in which you could find a slope is type in equal slope, and then select the known y values, press comma, and then select the known x values. So that's another way in which you can determine the slope of your data. Now, if you type in equal intercept, you can get the y-intercept as well. Select the known y values, and then the known x values. And when you see this number, like e to the negative 14 or negative 15, it's a very, 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 very small number. So you could say it's basically about 0. If you plug in an x value into this equation, you can get the y value. For example, when x is 1.2, y is going to be 20 times 1.2, which will give us 24. So this equation is a good description of this particular function or data. So now what about if x is, let's say, 5.6? What is the value of y? One way in which we can get the answer is by using this formula. So we can say equals, it's going to be 20 times 5.6, which is 112. Another way in which we can get that same answer is by using the forecast function. Now, since we have a nice linear function, the forecast function is going to give us a good answer. So the first thing we need to select is our x value, which is whatever is found in cell B9. So it's 5.6. Next, after you press comma, select your known y values and then your known x values. And so notice that it gives us the same answer, 112, since we have a nice linear relationship. Now there's different type of forecast functions that you can use. If you're not sure, just pick forecast and Excel will basically give you the best answer for that type of relationship. Now we have some other ones. .ets, and so that's if you have an exponential function. There's also .linear, which is good for linear trend, which is basically what we have. Or you could just simply select forecast, and it's going to choose the best one that it has for that particular data trend. And so that's basically it for this video. So if you want more examples on graphing, let's say making bar graphs, line graphs, pie charts, map charts, even solving equations with Excel, which you can do. You can solve linear equations, quadratic equations, even polynomial equations. I have all of that in my Excel video playlist. So feel free to take a look at that, and thanks for watching.